Great. Hello, everybody. And first, I want to thank you all for joining. My name is Mike Darcy. Like John said, I have a background in community advocacy. I come from the world of not-for-profits, where I was a senior staff member at ROPCO for many years, for about 10 years. I also worked for Assemblymember Kevin Cahill, advocating for funding for veterans programs, as well as some other things. And today I join you as a member of the Department of the Environment team. I also moonlight with the Office of Economic Development, where I create programs revolving around the creation of a green economy called UGreen. And I just recently created the Ulster County Green Business Champions Program, which is a national program that we're happy to take the lead on. Today, we're here to talk about the Ulster County Food Waste Prevention and Recovery Act and how it pertains to specific municipalities within the county. So the law basically expands on food scraps recycling requirements that are regulated by regulated generators of smaller amounts of waste. This includes schools, hospitals, and through extensions beyond the state law. The Ulster County Legislature found that Ulster County has a robust network of facilities ready to accept food scraps from the above mentioned purposes, and that maximizing the removal of food from the waste stream is must be a high priority. Right now, the act was adopted in 12/18 of 2009. It's important to understand sort of where that law goes and what it entails. So right now, we are in the greater than 1 ton of food scraps per week. So this is what we call the 1 ton cohort. Everybody who generates large amounts of food scraps over a ton per week is regulated by this law. Examples of those would be supermarkets, hospitals, SUNY schools. The county has a full list of those regulated generators on the Department of the Environment website, on the county site. And every year that drops to the last tranche, the last cohort will be 1/2 ton of food scraps per week. And that's going to really include some of our local restaurants and some other things. Some important dates to remember as I go back to this note is November of this year. Those that have been regulated by this law have until that date to submit whether it be a waiver or a dispute of status to the county. In January of 2023, there were 2022, they were required to begin separating their food scraps, and it'll also be the same for those 3/4 of a ton in 2023. They're also required to report to the Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency an annual waste and recycling information report to detail what measures they're taking to divert their food waste. In February of 2023, that's when those reports are due. And what we're looking for really is basically the same thing that's highlighted in the graphic that you see in front of you with the EPA's food waste hierarchy. We really want to start with source reduction, and we really want to avoid landfills or incineration. In the United States, food waste is estimated to be between 20 and 30% of the food supply. This figure, based on estimates from the USDA's Economic Research Service of 31% loss at retail and consumer needs, corresponds with approximately 133 billion pounds and $161 billion worth of food. That dates back to 2010. Imagine what it is now. Food waste is the single largest contributor to materials placed in municipal landfills and represents nourishment that could have helped feed families in need or return these nutrients to our local soils. Additionally, water, energy, labor, all used to produce food waste could have been employed and used for other purposes. Before the pandemic, 35 million people across America had food insecurity. That number is expected to rise as much as 50 million in 2021. I don't have those new numbers, but I keep that in there because that's an impactful number. This food, think locally about how many people we see in our food lines at food banks and food pantries. Almost, every weekend, the parking lot behind the food pantry across from Keegan Ales is packed with people. And I know Christine Hine has her hands full. So if we can help alleviate some of that burden, that's what we're here to do. For every 100 pounds of waste in our landfills, it sends 8.3 pounds of methane into the atmosphere. Over 20 years, methane has an 86 times the global warming effect of carbon dioxide. If global food were a country, it would rank third in greenhouse gas emissions after China and the US. Municipal waste and our landfills. Right now, as municipal waste, you can see by this graph, the municipal waste that is generated by the county is disposed of in the Seneca Meadows landfill. Now that's soon to close, and imagine what it costs for the transportation of that to go up there and back, and all of these trucks and all of this stuff that's happening, wear and tear on the roads, labor cost, all of those things. The percentage of greenhouse gas emissions from the solid waste sector alone, from that small sector, is 85.6%. So where does the food come from? Food processors, institutional locations, commercial, and residential homes. Lost food is generated through the entire process. Farming post-harvest, packing, processing, distributing, all of these things contribute to the amount of food waste we have in our systems. As it is right now, when we waste food, we're not only wasting money, but we're also wasting all of the natural resources invested in producing and transporting that food. 19% of cropland, 18% of fertilizer use, 21% of freshwater usage is dedicated to food that goes to waste each year. Ulster County has generated 17,058 tons of organic material, including source-separated food scraps, yard waste, fats, oils, grease, leaves, and grass trimmings, and also animal manure. Of that 1758 tons of organics, approximately 7,900 tons was source-separated food scraps, making up the largest material component of the organic recycling stream by weight. Based on a survey that was done by UCRA, Ulster County has a 16% composting rate. My goal is to get us to be somewhere around the 80% once we start including residential homes in a composting program, which has yet to be developed. But we should use San Francisco, California as a model, because they're currently at an 80% diversion rate. So what's our goal? We have all this product in a bin and it goes to the landfill. What we want to do is stop right there. We want our businesses to be the front line of defense to get this diverted. We want it to go to a source reduction, where people are taking what they're ordering and maximizing efficiency based off of what they're using over a month period. We want them to do a food waste inventory to see how much food they're wasting and to curtail and evaluate their ordering systems to stop doing that. We want food to be donated to local food banks, food pantries, gleaning, wherever we can. We don't want this food to just go to waste. We want it to be used, and that is a prime area where us in the Hudson Valley, especially in Ulster County, can make some serious progress. The next is animal feed. Now, animal feed, food waste for animal feed is a complex issue, and it's regulated not just on a state level, but a federal level. It would take a lot to get that to happen, but there are some examples of local farmers who are using some scraps that they're collecting from maybe their neighbors or from other places as animal feed currently. And we want it to go to anaerobic digestion as an option. Composting would be the easiest lift. This is what we have a lot of access to in the county. We have several locations, including community compost in Kirkhonkson, UCRA, a few others, and that are even in Gardner. We have places in the county that actually will teach composting and how to do so on not just a residential level, but how to divert for commercial use. And the last thing we want to do is get it into the landfill. That's something that we definitely want to avoid at all costs. If we can take that 40% and remove it, we're doing a lot. We're doing a lot to stem that tide. So with this, the county has to figure out some way of identifying these large generators. So the county uses what's called an organic resource locator that's put on and hosted by the New York State Pollution Prevention Institute. The locator is a web-based mapping tool that provides information on organic waste resources and generators in New York State. P2I, or the New York State Pollution Prevention Institute, has developed a methodology for estimating the amount of food scraps generated weekly by different types of businesses and institutions. This methodology can be reviewed at their website, which is that link right there. I'll take a pause for a second just in case anybody wants to look at that. I would highly recommend that people review what the methodology is, because it's different for every different sector of business. And this is what the county has used to go by. This is also what the state uses in their composting program as well. This is the same program. So what's the difference between the county law and the state law? As you can see, New York State regulates generators that have to be within a certain distance of a composting facility. It does not include healthcare facilities or schools, and the county does not make that exception. There's also no exception for the distance between composting facility and the source. If you're already regulated under New York State law and New York State law food scraps recycling law, at this point for this year, you still have the option of submitting that waiver. After this year, with our next cohort, that is not an option. We have made an amendment to the law to say if you are regulated by that, you are also regulated by the county law. We don't want you to just be forced to or be encouraged to donate your food. We want you to try every option within the EPA's food waste hierarchy. A couple of important links that are here, and I'll also send the organizers of this a PDF of this presentation so that it can be sent to those who need to have these links on hand. Within the PDF, these are just clickable links, but I thought this would be a good time to give out some resources and where to find the information. And of course, I want to thank you for attending. Again, I'm here to help. The phone number that's on this slide is updated. You can currently reach me at that email address that's on the slide, or you can reach me at 845-705-7883. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have moving forward.
Thank you. We have a couple of them here. Do you see the chat?
I don't, but if you were to,
okay, well, I can ask it. How is the weight of scrap production determined?
Yeah, so that's where the ORL methodology comes in. In some places, it's the number of employees. In some places, like correctional facilities, it's the number of inmates. It's different for every sector of business.
And who's participating? Are you allowed to say that?
Well, I can. Like I said, the county has a listing of those who are regulated by the Act on the county's website. And again, right now, those that are regulated, I would say, are our SUNY schools, our larger supermarkets, thinking Hannaford's, some large chain restaurants, and our local correctional facilities. And by the way, a lot of these entities are already diverting. They have robust programs in place to divert. I know the correctional facilities all collect, and it goes to their own composting program. So a lot of what we're finding are people who are already actively engaged in the process.
Do they pay for that, or are they getting paid for their waste? Are they?
They do not. They have to pay for the waste to some. Well, I would assume that with the correctional facilities, they're using their own transportation to go from one facility to the other. but most people have to pay for a hauler to come and transport that waste, whether it's the composting company themselves or someone like Royal Carting.
So in Ulster County, is there only Royal Carting that are taking away the compost or the organic waste?
Well, Royal Carting is the main one that delivers they deliver to the Gardner facility, they deliver to Accra. They also deliver, and then you have places like community composting where they have their own program set up in their own bins, and they'll transport their own product to their own facility.
Is anybody organizing the food that's going to be eaten by somebody else, donating the food to charity organizations, or are they taking care of that themselves?
They take care of that themselves, but there are a lot of local organizations that help also facilitate information like that. The Hudson Valley Food Bank. There are several that'll organize that pickup and supply.
Michael, while you're answering questions, could you put up the last slide? There's a request to get that contact information.
Sure, absolutely.
So currently, you're saying that UCRA is oh, you're missing the last four numbers of your.
Yeah, the phone number that you want is 845-705-7883.
So UCRA or UCRA, they're taking compost. Who else is making compost right now?
Community composting in Kerhonkson is making composting, and Greenway. Here, let's just fix that. Greenway out in Gardner are also making compost. And there are smaller organizations too. There are small farms and small places that are starting to do their own composting. I believe Phoenicia is, there's a gentleman in Phoenicia who's just starting to do a community composting company. And I think he presented to this group as well. What was his name?
Michael, if I can also, Town of New Paltz is composting.
Right, good. Town of New Paltz is also composting. Hello, Manna, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Do you want to
thank you for an excellent presentation.
Thank you for
add something to that, Manna? Do you want to add something? Explain who you are for those who don't know.
I'm Manna Jo Green. My day job is that I'm the environmental director for Clearwater, but I also serve as an Ulster County Legislator, and I helped develop this law, which had a lot of input from businesses, haulers, certainly restaurants, schools, etc. And one of the things I found out that I was surprised about, I've been tracking composting since it started at Frost Valley, Mohonk, and the prisons, excuse me, the prison system. But I was delighted when I was talking to one of my fellow legislators to find out that Ellenville Hospital has been composting before the law. So I think what Mike said about the fact that they're discovering, how many businesses are already diverting waste by composting, and now through education, and also kind of peer matching, saying that there are these wonderful examples out there. It can be done either on site or by having a hauler bring it. And I also want to give kudos to SUNY New Paltz, which Greenway trained, and they are diverting a phenomenal amount of food waste and using reusable containers. So there's a lot of good news, and I think it's just a matter of helping it to catch on, which this is a really good step in that direction.
I have the opportunity since doing this work to go and tour all of these facilities around the county. The ones that are not just making the compost, but the ones that are adding to their production. And SUNY New Paltz's program is just bar none one of the best programs around. They even have a program where their to-goes are brought back, washed, and reused, so that there's no plastic, styrofoams, anything going out. Their students have the opportunity to bring back their own utensils and their own wares. It's incredible the work they're doing. Mohonk Mountain House creates their own compost, uses it for their own gardens. They have a fantastic program, and Frost Valley as well. I mean, they took a hit during COVID, but I can tell you right now that the staff there are eagerly anticipating getting their composting program back up and running. So I've had the pleasure of being able to tour the county and see these facilities, and it is amazing.
Did you see that was SUNY New Paltz or Ulster County?
SUNY New Paltz.
New Paltz. Do they compost that on site, or do they take it away?
No, they take it away. Where, like Manna was talking about, Greenway is New Paltz located composting facility, and the folks that are there, Shabazz and Josephine Jackson, are just an amazing power couple of knowledge, and they not only train grad students in what it is to compost and how to do so efficiently and safely for the environment. They'll also go into communities and organizations and give advice on how to do that, and they do an amazing job. I mean, quite honestly, we're highlighting one, but I have to tell you, all three organizations that I'm aware of, all of the composting organizations in the county, they are doing so much work, and they're so helpful, and it has been a pleasure to work with them. They're amazing.
We could actually serve as a template for, say, Ryndout High School who might want to get into it. They could maybe use them as inspiration, or maybe kind of spread that knowledge out to them.
Yeah, 100%.
There's a number of questions in the chat, and Michael Hartner has his hand up. Michael, can you unmute yourself?
Hello, everybody. I just figured I'd throw out a comment, and maybe it will generate some discussion, or you or somebody might contribute an idea to me on how to take it further. But I attended it was on July 25th, there was a webinar on the title was Municipal Food Scrap Hauling Pilot Project, which I think is part of your department, Mike. Angelina Brandt, I think, was the person who headed it up.
Right.
And basically they're trying to, I'm sorry?
Go ahead, please.
Basically, they're trying to encourage municipalities to get homeowners to contribute their food scraps. But the more I learned about that particular webinar, it didn't really, to be honest with you, seem too feasible. And also, I spoke to the guy who runs the recycling center in Gardner. I don't know if I mentioned, I'm the ECC chair in Gardner. And he said to me that Gardner actually tried its own composting facility at the recycling center a few years ago, and it didn't work out at all. There weren't enough people contributing to it, and also there was some problem that the DEC didn't like with it, so it had to be dismantled. But he said it was sort of, I don't recall the statistics, but he said, you know, Mike, even only X% of our people separate their recyclables from their garbage. And it was something like, I think he said 30%, which is a shocking figure to me. I don't know if that's consistent with what you guys hear in your towns. But anyway, the point was that the initiative that the municipal food scrap hauling pilot project, I don't really see that as viable. So I started thinking of what we could do here. And what did occur to me is that we have a lot of farms in Gardner. And if we set something up, and at least 2 of those farms, maybe 3, maybe 4, have their own farm stands where they sell produce and other products. And so if we were to convince them to set up some sort of receptacle where they accept food scraps from homeowners, and it seems to me it would be a win-win situation, because the farmers are getting the food scraps to use as fertilizer. I guess that's what they use it for. And they're getting people coming in on a regular basis who might stop and buy some of their products. So that's basically what I discussed it with our ECC, and that's basically how we're going to try and get started. Because then you don't have to deal with the issues of, where do you bring it? How do you store it? How do you secure it from bears and things like that? And then when do you have it picked up? And, the timing of that whole stuff and the costs involved in all those things disappear if you go with the kind of model that I'm talking about.
Mm.
So
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. Just as a point of clarity, so that program is a program, and you mentioned her, Angelina Brandt. She works as the recycling coordinator for the Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency. So I work for the Department of the Environment, and I am the outreach manager for this person I'm the person who's trying to inform about this county law. So it's two entirely different things, but you're absolutely right, where we have a problem with participation from residents, and I think it has to do with the amount of distance that someone would have to travel, and everything that you also pointed out, where we're talking about vermin, vectors in any of this stuff. So that is an interesting concept that you're throwing out, and I think that it would be something that, if done correctly, could be a model for other communities to enact. So I appreciate your feedback on that.
Another question was, what about food dating? Are we donating old food?
Yeah, there are if you donate food, there are regulations around when that has to happen and by what date, especially food that's processed or prepared. As far as vegetables and fruits go, it's really, it's interesting. I sat as a panelist for a movie on food waste, and the amount of bruised fruits and vegetables that are just discarded and not used by grocery stores is amazing. And you'll see local farmers which will allow gleaning, so people can come on and come onto their property and sort of pick the stuff that they're not able to use. And some of those fruits and vegetables are also donated to the food bank. And as long as they're not rotting and usable, I think that's the gauge.
Another question is, how does animal food waste fit into this program?
Animal food waste is not something that we're really concerned about right now. We're talking about, production of what we use as humans here. We're really talking about people who are producing a lot of food, like the colleges, like we talked about with the jails. Animal food waste is not something that we cover right now, and I don't know if there are plans to do that in the future.
Another question is, what's the typical turnaround time from food to compost? Is it done in bins, tanks, outside?
Yeah, so what I've learned in doing this is there are a million ways to compost, and you can do it in your backyard with a 3-bin way. You can do it with all kinds of ways. Some large processes can take 90 days. Sometimes it can take longer than that, depending on the process and how long it takes to what they call cook, and for the microbes to do their thing to break down the food and return those nutrients to the pile. It really varies depending on the method that you're using to compost.
Another interesting question, as the weight rules get lower, will there be a lot of businesses who are complying? And the side thing is, how will this be enforced?
Right. So enforcement is a touchy topic right now, but I can tell, and that might be a better question for our county legislature. But I can tell you that I'm there to inform the businesses that they are required to. And I hope that with the work that I've been doing, not just this year, but up until 2024, if we can get to an 80% number, I would think that would be the best number we could get to.
Let me throw a question in here. You were talking about all of our refuse goes to Seneca in Ulster County, and they're closing that soon.
Yes.
Are there any ideas of where it's going to go after that closes? And
Well,
when
I don't have a lot of intimate knowledge on the process, but I do know that there has been a survey that was sent to each municipality to gauge whether or not they would be comfortable with having something like a landfill in their community. I don't know the exact results of those. That was sent out by UCRA. I think it's their responsibility or their job to try to figure these things out. And honestly, with Manna here, she would most likely know more about that than I do.
Can you speak about that at all, Amanda?
Well, the UCRA has retained someone to look at the county and see what potentially feasible sites there are. It'll take a while to sort that out. Certainly a willing municipality would be ideal if there is a good site. But right now, I think the emphasis is on diverting as much waste as possible. So if you divert food waste, you're also diverting odor. If you divert construction and demolition debris, one of the worst sources of odors in a landfill is sheetrock, the hydrogen sulfide that's released. And if you have household hazardous waste collections so that there's no toxic material, and we maximize our waste diversion by reduction, reuse, recycling, composting, then wherever a landfill is sited, it'll be less onerous. And the other component is that there would be hopefully a generous host community benefit package that goes to that municipality for any negative impacts, additional traffic and so forth. But I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I do know that it's about $8 to $9 million a year to export our waste to Seneca Meadows, plus all the fossil fuel that's burned in both directions. It really is important that we find a way to solve that problem within our own borders and take responsibility. But waste diversion is what we're focusing on right now, is to reduce the amount of waste and only send residual to a landfill.
Is there any idea, do you have any idea how long Seneca is going to be able to take the waste?
There's a lot of debate about that. I believe their license expires within 5 years, and they have to have, they have to reapply. They are very confident that they're going to be open longer than that. But, again, $9 million a year with all the pollution associated. I think we really have to focus on finding a local facility that makes sense and is done in a way that is, very wisely cited, and hopefully in the community willing to take that responsibility and be compensated.
Would it make sense to have more than one in Ulster County, say distribute it to say 5 or 6 different locations? Or everybody takes their own waste to one location?
They did consider that approximately 30 years ago when we first considered siting a landfill. And I think ultimately there were 3 locations, but one surfaced and it wasn't hydrogeologically appropriate. So it was discounted and ultimately we went to export. I don't know whether a decentralized system in Ulster County would work or be necessary, but it would reduce transportation, would also result in a shared burden. So, you know, that's a good thing to suggest to the UCR or aid to consider. But I think the bottom line is going to be that it's hard enough to cite a landfill, and to cite, you know, multiple ones, you know, might be harder and ultimately more costly. So it's a trade-off. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think what we're doing here, folks, is the most important step that we need to focus on, and we need to get this information out. Right now, my focus is entirely on these large generators of food waste, but we should also be focusing on ways to divert residential as well. So that's going to be up to the communities within the county to come up with that until we get to a place where we can support that. But it also has to be a priority. We have to divert as much as we can, and we have to do it now. And it's going to lessen that amount of money and that burden on our environment that we can.
Michael, what's the system set up for the generators, like someone like Hannaford, who wants to donate their food to a place like People's Place or Food Pantry? How does it physically move?
Yeah, they have their own, they have a company that they work for that comes in and picks it up and then takes it to someplace. I don't know if it's local or not. I would assume some of it is, but I don't think all of it does. And that's really where a lot of supermarkets have that sort of system in place already. And especially like I was talking with the Boyceville market, and their retailer takes back what they don't use, as long as it's not, you know, they take it back and do whatever they do with it, as far as returning it to, either donating it to a food bank or using whatever they use it with. But they also have a program in place.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's Richard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems like a kind of a hard sell to get someone to put a landfill in their backyard. I wonder what the what will be the benefits of that.
I guess we will find out. Well, I think Manna hit the nail on the head. I think it has to, we have to share that burden somehow, and we can't keep living and transporting and doing what we're doing now. And that's the message that has to come across while we're doing these, while we're hiring people to go out. Not we, as UCR, is hiring people to go out and gauge the interest from the community. We have to talk about the impact of what it is to continue what we're doing without changing it.
Yeah, this has got to be the great first step. Go ahead, Bruce.
Thanks. I'm with the town of Shandaken CAC, and we already have a recycling center at Town Hall, so we're implementing a composting component of that. Hopefully, we'll be in motion within the next few months. So we'll see how that goes. But what we're doing is collecting the compost from residents who are already using our facility for recycling, and hopefully that will grow, and we'll report later on and see how that all turns out.
I want to give a shout out to Bruce.
That's great, Bruce. And your residents will bring the stuff directly to the landfill?
Along with their recycling, yes.
Right.
And we're working out getting a bear-proof container to put that all in, and then a commercial hauler will take it away, and at a cost to the town, of course. But I don't think the cost is significant.
I had the pleasure of presenting to the Shandaken CSC, and give a big shout out to Bruce. Bruce's son and his business, I had just certified as an Ulster County Green business for the work that they're doing. And I'm happy to see your face, Bruce.
Okay, good to be here.
That's great.
We have the same kind of a thing going in Rochester too, residential compost. It's very small, one little barrel in the corner, but it's a first step.
It is the first step, I know. The question I had before about animal waste, I don't know how you meant what you read of that, but I was talking about if residents bring in their waste of meat, food waste, as far as meat and stuff goes. Is that compostable?
It is compostable. I know that there are a couple of farms that take food waste, they use it as compost. Some of them even go and pick it up themselves. And they have that program. I believe the gentleman who presented alongside me, the Phoenicia Composting Company, I think that's what they're doing with their collection of food waste, right? So that is happening. It's very rare, but it does happen. For animal feed, like I said, for animal feed to create a program, there's state and federal regulations, probably about 10 each, that have to be followed. One of those things that the food has to be sterilized and cooked, and if it's done right and done according to regulation, there's a lot that's involved with that.
Right, but for backyard recycling, animal meat waste is not preferable.
No.
Okay.
I think, if I may, that it's a little trickier in backyards because of animals getting into it, which, if you don't mind, they usually just stir up the pile. But I do think that all of the large food waste composting facilities do allow meat to be included, and they have a good system. They mix it with mulch. In most cases, it's aerated, and it's able to break down fairly easily. The other thing with backyard composting is, pets getting into it. And so you have to be careful, like not to put chicken bones and stuff like that. But generally, most composting can be done, can include meat scraps. I'd be a little more careful if you're composting in the backyard in the city. But in our more rural and suburban areas, I think it's fine. In addition to UCRA, there's also Cornell Cooperative Extension has a very good master composter program, and they will come to your home and help you set it up and troubleshoot it. So I think, backyard composting is not difficult, and should be encouraged where it's appropriate.
Yeah,
I use meat products in the backyard compost. I even throw roadkill in there when it kind of turns up. But what keeps animals out of it is that I use manure.
Yeah. You also have to be aware of fats too. So if you're doing like the reason why I'm hesitant to add meats to a backyard compost, besides eggshells and things like that, bones, are the fats too, trimmings. So people are there using fats and stuff. You want to keep that stuff out of compost as much as possible. Meat itself, that type of protein, you can get away with it. Just if it's a high fatty content, that's something you want to avoid.
Why, Michael? What happens with fat in it?
It doesn't break down the way that you would normally do organics. So you want, it's gonna complicate the sauce, if you will. Also, hi Judith.
Yeah, hi. Okay, that's good to know.
All right, anything else? Great. Anybody else? Great presentation, Michael. Thank you so much for.
Thank you, Michael.
That was a great
Well
discussion.
done, Michael. Thank you. Thanks all for participating. Thank you, manager. It was all very helpful information.